The sound.
The sound of the county. And all the music you love. BBC. Radio Somerset.
Right now, we're going to be talking astronomy because, I guess, the weather's getting nicer, isn't it? As we head into summer, there's a slightly more warmth in the night, so maybe you're spotting a few more stars. We've talked about stars quite a lot on this show, actually, in the last few months. But also because there is an issue potentially starting, or maybe even already started, actually, where satellites are creating pollution in the night sky. And I'm not talking about, emissions. I am talking gaseous emissions, I guess. I'm talking about light and movement in the night sky. Let's have a chat with Josh Dury, who's from the Mendips. He's an astronomer. Hi, Josh.
Good evening, Charlie.
Hi there, great to speak to you. Now, we spoke, when was this? Last year at some point when there was there was a nice event going on at the Wells and Mendip Museum, all to do with space. So
That's
that
the
was
one.
good. I remember that. It was an absolutely lovely day. Gorgeous sunshine in the little garden around the back of the museum. So tell us what you've been up to, because you've been making some films, haven't you?
That's right, so I've been making a series of short films here, and it was just before the lockdown, so I've recently been doing some work in night sky conservation. So it sort of really began when I was studying at Bristol UWE for my filmmaking degree.
All right.
And this was at a time when Blue Planet 2 was being launched by the BBC's Natural History Unit. So, as your listeners may well be aware, we're very aware now of the plastic crisis. And from my background and passion for astronomy, it made me consider how the night sky is being affected in terms of pollution. And it was from that I learnt more about light pollution and its effects upon the natural world. And some of the most classic examples being seeing the outlines of major continents at night from the International Space Station. And it really is a global issue. And down on the ground, it's not only affecting astronomers and their ability to look up at the night sky, but also wildlife conservation, thinking about nocturnal species and their migratory patterns, as well as human health implications and affecting the production of our bodily hormones.
Gosh, there's a lot. I mean, there's a wide range of effects it's having. Okay, so, because when I think of light pollution here, I know that you're talking, there's wide about, a lot of different bits of light pollution. There's a video I watched that you sent me earlier on, which is really interesting that I hadn't even considered before. But let's talk about things like street lights, car lights, houses, businesses, all of those lights on. What sort of impact can that have? Let's just talk about astronomy. Can that really seriously impact what you do?
Oh, very seriously, yes. So if you think about it, especially in and around Somerset, we're very lucky to have some very dark skies, which means in the early hours of the morning, if you were to go out, you would see the Milky Way galaxy overhead. And for young astronomers like myself, it is a beautiful sight to see. However, if you go further into major towns and cities like Bristol, those who are living there are not able to see the night sky because of this effect of light shining upwards, and at a time when there is much more movement on the roads, that would also contribute to the issue, and street lighting as well. There's lots of differences between halogen and more recently LED light bulbs, and trying to build this counterweight issue as to what is the best solution that works well with not only just astronomers but also the natural environment.
Okay, well, let's talk about that now, the natural environment. What impact can it have on nature, having lights on all the time and lighting up things like businesses even overnight?
Well, especially with nocturnal species, it can affect their migratory patterns. A very good example I found whilst producing my latest film, Back to the Light, is the effect of migratory patterns of hedgehogs. And I know this sounds very bizarre to begin with, but if you consider, like I mentioned in towns and cities, with light shining on practically most areas of the road, it does affect migratory patterns of these species. And at the same time as with us humans, we have this effect whereby when we sleep, our bodies produce this chemical hormone called melatonin, and this is responsible for maintaining our sleep cycle. And it's the same in nocturnal species as well. And as a result, it is another further contribution to declining populations of sought-after species now in the United Kingdom.
I know hedgehogs. I love hedgehogs, and they are struggling numbers-wise at the moment.
They are.
So you think that light pollution could be part of that? I guess there's lots of reasons, but light pollution certainly could well be one of those issues that they're coming up against.
Most definitely, yes,
Wow.
especially with roads being lit up as well. That's another contribution with much busier traffic at a time before the lockdown. But now it's this problem with light pollution that it's such a new area in the terms of the climate crisis, really, as it is. And it's just really getting some public awareness on the issue.
Not to mention the fact that I guess having all those lights on isn't particularly good for burning greenhouse gases or fuels. That isn't, particularly brilliant for the air that we breathe as well. So plenty of reasons to think twice about it. Let's talk about satellites now. This is something I didn't know anything about until I watched your video on this earlier, Josh. So satellites, which are in space, orbiting the Earth, they also are affecting what you're doing as astronomers, because there are now so many and so many more going up pretty much every month.
That's right, yes. So this was a news piece I found out myself personally as an astronomer at the end of last year. And so it was when I began to learn about the term mega satellite constellations. So basically what this is more of the satellites are going to eventually be launched into low Earth orbit, which is within the Earth's atmosphere. So as your listeners may be aware, we see events like the International Space Station go overhead, and these are very, irregular occurrences. So to see a satellite can be quite exciting, And it's the concern now that there's companies such as SpaceX, which are planning to launch up to thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of these satellites into the night sky. So with SpaceX as an example, they're a brilliant company in terms of influencing modern technology and innovation and pushing space exploration. However, it's their latest project, which is the Starlink satellite constellation, which is of most concern to astronomers, because there's an intended initial launch within the next 5 years for 12,000 satellites to be launched. Now, if I was to tell you that there's approximately 5,000 stars visible to the unaided eye in the northern hemisphere, that's already going to outnumber the visible stars of the night sky. And that's not even the cherry on the cake, because there's now been an extension put through to launch up to 42,000 of these satellites. So really, we could be the last generation which could potentially observe our open window to the universe as we know it. And it's concerns for astronomers like me, because during the lockdown, there's much more of the general public observing the night sky and taking great passion for it. And when they see these satellites come overhead, especially after they've been launched, they appear as a string of pearls through the night sky, and they can be quite bright as well, so they can actually be even brighter than the visible stars of the night sky. And it's that concern that initially they appear very close to one another, but they eventually get further up in their orbits and they separate. But in doing so, they're visible for longer periods of the night, and it means that eventually it will contribute to this further situation of space pollution. So not only have we got the pollution of the ocean with plastics and light pollution as discussed earlier, but we've also now got the degradation of the night sky, and it's concerns that really, for professional astronomical observations around the world, our view of the night sky is going to be affected instead of providing a global internet coverage.
I suppose space, just because they're not here to defend themselves, but I suppose what they'd say is that they're bringing this global internet and all the benefits that would come with it, and GPS, I guess, to a massive audience, to people who perhaps wouldn't be able to receive internet before, or as good internet. So I guess there are benefits as well to people, aren't there? And I know that astronomers clearly are very worried, and it sounds like that there's good reason for that to be an issue. But also there'll be benefits for people like me, who, I don't do a lot of astronomy, but perhaps I'll be able to benefit from the satellites and the work they are doing.
Yes, that's correct. So, as you mentioned earlier, this project from SpaceX is to provide a global internet service, which means that when this satellite constellation is eventually launched and up and running, it means you could access internet from the Sahara Desert to as far as in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So, like I said earlier, it really is a fleet of amazing modern technology, and it can be accessed for all, but it's just this general concern of how it's going to affect our view of the night sky and adding to the situation of the natural world and the impact it will have.
I think it's absolutely fascinating, Josh. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. Not something I'd ever heard of before, but clearly something that is going to be causing an issue, especially if, like you say, there's tens of thousands of satellites. I mean, that does sound like a lot, doesn't it? Tens of thousands of these things going up there. Look, Josh, we've got to leave it there, but thank you so much. For people who want to find out more, want to see your videos, what do they need to look for online?
They're to type in on Google, type in www.joshduryphotomedia.com, and there's also links to my social media channels on both Facebook and Instagram.
Brilliant. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Josh, thank you.
All right, thank you for having me, Charlie.